The stars had never seemed so distant. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the United Earth Coalition headquarters, staring at the red planet that hung in the black void. Mars. Her home. Or what used to be her home. 3 days ago, Mars Colony 3 had been alive. 340,000 people lived there. They worked in the mines, raised families in the underground habitats, and dreamed of terraforming the red soil into something green and beautiful. 3 days ago, they had futures. Now there was only silence and dust, and the cold certainty that humanity had just learned the most terrible lesson in its history. The Zintax had made sure of that. Sarah remembered the first message. It had arrived 6 weeks earlier, translated by the best linguists Earth had. The words were simple, almost polite. The Zintax hegemony had discovered humanity. They were offering us a place in their empire. All we had to do was accept their leadership, pay tribute, and follow their laws. The United Earth Coalition had responded carefully. President Martinez himself had crafted the message. We explained that humanity valued independence. We offered friendship, trade, and cultural exchange. We asked for time to consider their proposal. The Zintax response had been immediate and clear. They destroyed Mars Colony 3 in 14 seconds. Sarah had watched it happen. The defense satellites picked up the Zintax warship as it approached. It was massive, 3 kilometers long, shaped like some kind of insect. The weapons it fired were invisible. One moment the colony domes were intact. The next moment they were simply gone. Vaporized. 340,000 people erased from existence. The second message from the Zintax arrived an hour later. It was shorter than the first. Submit or face corrective cleansing. That was 3 days ago. Since then, Sarah had slept maybe 4 hours total. The entire United Earth Coalition government had gone into emergency session. Every military leader, every scientist, every person with any knowledge that might help had been called to headquarters. Dr. Marcus Webb stood beside her now, his reflection ghostly in the observation window. He was a xenoanthropologist, one of the few people on Earth who had studied the possibility of alien contact. He looked older than he had 3 days ago. We have to respond, Sarah said quietly. Webb nodded. I know, I just wish we had more information. The Zintax have been doing this for 3,000 years. They have conquered 47 different species. They know how to break civilizations. What do you recommend? Sarah asked. Webb was silent for a long moment. From a purely logical standpoint, we should surrender. Their technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of ours. Their fleet could destroy every city on Earth in less than a day. If we fight, we lose. Probably badly. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. But you do not think we should surrender? It was not a question. Webb shook his head. No. I studied Earth history before I studied aliens. I know what happens when a weaker civilization surrenders to a stronger one. Sometimes it works out. Usually it does not. And the Zintax just murdered 340,000 people as a demonstration. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of overlords they would be. So we fight, Sarah said. We fight, Webb agreed, and we will probably die. But at least we die free. The meeting started an hour later. Every major government leader was there, either in person or by hologram. President Martinez sat at the head of the table, his face gray with exhaustion. General Thompson commanded Earth Defense Force. Admiral Rodriguez led the Space Navy. They were all looking at Sarah. She stood and activated the display. The Zintax fleet appeared above the table, rendered in cold blue light. 500 ships according to their own broadcasts, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. They are moving toward Earth, Sarah said. Current velocity suggests they will arrive in 42 days. Their commander is High Executor Kraxtal. From what we have learned from their communications, he has conquered 12 species personally. He considers this assignment routine. Can we stop them? Martinez asked. Sarah looked him in the eye. Not with our current fleet. We have 68 warships. They have 500. Our weapons are less powerful. Our shields are weaker. In a direct confrontation, we would be destroyed in minutes. The room was silent. Then General Thompson spoke. What about the other projects? Sarah felt her heart beat faster. That was classified information. Information that most of the people in this room did not have clearance to know. She looked at President Martinez. He nodded slowly. Tell them, he said quietly. Sarah took a deep breath. Since 1952, certain governments have been preparing for this scenario, not specifically the Xinthax, but the possibility of hostile alien contact. We have been running classified military projects for over a century. She changed the display. New images appeared. Weapons, ships, technologies that should not exist yet. Project Prometheus. Artificial intelligence systems that can outthink any human commander. Project Ragnarok. Kinetic weapons that travel at a significant percentage of light speed. Project Pandora. Biological weapons designed to target specific alien physiologies. And Project Sleeper. She paused. The Sleeper Fleet, 200 warships built in secret over 80 years. Hidden in hollowed asteroids throughout the solar system. They match Xinthax technology, and they are ready to deploy. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. How was this kept secret? Who authorized this? What else did they not know? President Martinez raised his hand. The room fell silent. The details do not matter now. What matters is that we have options. We can fight. The question is whether we should. Admiral Rodriguez stood. With respect, Mr. President, I do not think that is the question. The Xinthax murdered 340,000 people. They did it to scare us, to break us. If we surrender now, we are saying that terror works. We are saying that murder is an acceptable negotiating tactic. He looked around the room. My wife was on Mars Colony 3, so were my children. If we do not fight now, their deaths meant nothing, and humanity becomes just another conquered species in the Xinthax Empire. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would fight. High Executor Crax Tal sat in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. He was reviewing the latest intelligence on the human homeworld. It was a primitive place. Only one planet colonized. A few outposts on moons and asteroids. No faster than light travel. No energy shields worth mentioning. It would be over quickly. It always was. His second-in-command approached. The humans have not responded to our ultimatum, Commander. Crax Tal waved one of his lower arms dismissively. They will. They always do. The demonstration at their colony was sufficient. They understand the cost of defiance now. But what if they choose to fight? Then they die, Crax Tal said simply. We have conquered 47 species. The humans will be the 48th. Their resistance will last perhaps a day, perhaps less. It does not matter. He turned back to his displays, already bored with the conversation. The Xinthax hegemony had been doing this for 3,000 years. Humanity was just another primitive species that needed to learn its place in the galaxy. The fact that they even considered resistance was almost amusing. Almost. In 42 days, the Xinthax fleet would arrive at Earth. In 42 days, High Executor Crax Tal would learn something that 47 other species had never managed to teach him. Some prey bites back. Captain James Rodriguez had not slept in 2 days. He stood in the briefing room of Special Operations Command, watching the holographic display rotate slowly in the air. It showed a Xinthax destroyer, captured from their own transmissions. Every angle, every weapon port, every vulnerable point they could identify, which was not many. Your mission is simple, Admiral Chen said from the head of the table. We need intelligence. We need to know how their ships work. We need to understand their technology, and we need it before the main fleet arrives. James looked at the other 11 people around the table. His team, the best soldiers humanity had. They had trained for impossible missions. This one might actually be impossible. The Xinthax have scout ships moving through the asteroid belt, Chen continued. They are mapping our defenses. One of them will pass within strike range in 18 hours. Your team will intercept it, board it, download everything you can from their computers, and get out before they can send a distress signal. And if we cannot get out, James asked. Chen met his eyes. Then you make sure the intelligence gets transmitted before you die. We need that data, Captain. Whatever the cost, James nodded. He had known it would come to this. When his wife and children died on Mars Colony 3, he had known. There was no going back. No return to the world before. There was only the mission, only the fight. Understood, Admiral. 18 hours later, James floated in the darkness between the stars. His stealth suit made him almost invisible, a ghost against the black. Around him, his team drifted in formation, waiting. The Xinthax scout ship appeared exactly on schedule. It was smaller than their warships, but still 3 times the size of anything humans had built. It moved through the asteroid belt with careless confidence, scanning for defenses that would not be there. Contact in 30 seconds. His team leader whispered through the comm link. Remember, we go in fast and quiet, no alerts, no survivors. James checked his weapons one last time. Human technology, primitive compared to the Xinthax. But humans had learned to kill with rocks and sticks. They would learn to kill with whatever they had. The ship passed within 50 meters. James activated his suit thrusters and launched himself toward the hull. The magnetic clamps on his boots engaged with a soft thud. He was on. The team worked quickly. Plasma cutters burned through the outer hull. The Xinthax had good armor, but they had never fought an enemy that came from the outside. Why would they? Every species they conquered surrendered or died. They breached the hull in 4 minutes. The interior was alien in ways that made James uncomfortable. The walls curved wrong. The lighting was too blue. The air smelled like chemicals he could not name. 3 Xinthax crew members were in the corridor. They were insectoid, like the intelligence reports said. Tall, armored, carrying weapons that looked organic. They died before they could raise an alarm. James and 2 others moved toward the bridge, while the rest of the team secured the ship. They encountered 6 more Xinthax, all died. The humans moved like shadows, using every advantage they had. Speed, surprise, desperation. The bridge was empty when they arrived. The pilot had gone to investigate the breach. That was his last mistake. Get me into their system, James ordered. His tech specialist went to work. The Xinthax computers were advanced, but they were not prepared for human hackers. Within minutes, data began flowing. Ship specifications, fleet movements, communication protocols, battle tactics, everything. Captain, we have a problem, one of his team called from the engine room. They have a dead man switch. If the crew does not check in every hour, an automatic distress signal goes out. How long do we have? 8 minutes. James made the decision in seconds. We take the ship. Get to the escape pods now. But the data transfer is not complete, his specialist protested. Transmit what we have, then set the reactor to overload. We are making sure this ship never reports back. They moved fast. The data transmitted in compressed bursts. The reactor started its cascade, and 12 humans launched themselves away from the ship in stolen escape pods, just as the Xinthax scout ship tore itself apart in a brief, brilliant explosion. Admiral Chen reviewed the stolen data with a team of scientists and engineers. What they found changed everything. The Xinthax were powerful, yes. Their weapons were advanced. Their shields were strong, but they had been using the same basic technology for 1,000 years. They had not needed to innovate. Why would they? They won every battle, conquered every species. Humans were different. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. Every generation brought new weapons, new tactics, new ways to kill, and now they would turn that innovation against an enemy that had forgotten how to adapt. Dr. Webb worked with the engineering teams day and night. They reverse-engineered everything: shields, weapons, propulsion, and they found the weaknesses. Xinthax shields could not handle rapid frequency changes. Their armor was vulnerable to kinetic weapons at certain velocities. Their communications used predictable encryption. Their tactics followed standard patterns. Humans could exploit all of it. The sleeper fleet began to wake. Hidden bases throughout the solar system activated. Ships that had waited in darkness for decades powered up their reactors. Weapon systems came online. Crews that had trained in secret their entire lives prepared for the only mission they would ever fly. Admiral Chen stood in the command center, watching the display fill with friendly icons. 200 ships, each one built with technology that should not exist. Each one crewed by people who knew they might not survive the coming battle, but they would fight anyway. The Xinthax fleet was 20 days from Earth when they detected the first anomaly. High Executor Craxtal reviewed the sensor data with growing irritation. "What is this?" he demanded. His sensor officer clicked his mandibles nervously. "Unknown ships, Commander. They appeared from the asteroid belt. Our initial scans suggest they are human vessels, but their technology signatures do not match our previous intelligence." "How many?" "At least 200, Commander." Craxtal felt something he had not experienced in many years. Surprise. The humans were supposed to have fewer than 100 warships total. Where had these come from? No matter. 200 ships against 500. The mathematics still favored the Zintax, and mathematics did not lie. "Prepare the fleet for battle," he ordered. "The humans wish to die fighting instead of surrendering. We will grant their wish." But as the two fleets moved toward each other, as human ships that should not exist prepared to face an empire that had never lost, Kraxtal felt something else, something he would never admit to his crew. Doubt Admiral Chen transmitted a single message to the Zintax fleet. It was not diplomatic. It was not friendly. It was 3 simple words that would be remembered for generations. You should have stayed away. The Battle of Jupiter was about to begin. The Battle of Jupiter began at 600 hours Earth Standard Time. 2 fleets faced each other across the void. 500 Zintax warships arranged in perfect formation, confident in their superiority. 200 human ships spread across space in patterns that made no tactical sense to the Zintax commanders. That was the first mistake the Zintax made. Assuming humans would fight like every other species they had conquered, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display from the bridge of the Earth defense ship Defiance. Her fleet was outnumbered, probably outgunned despite their new technology. But humans had one advantage the Zintax did not expect. "Humans were creative, all ships," she said calmly. "Execute Protocol Chaos." The human fleet scattered. Ships that had been in loose formation suddenly accelerated in different directions. Some dove toward Jupiter, others climbed away from the orbital plane. A dozen ships launched themselves directly at the Zintax fleet at maximum velocity. High Executor Kraxtal watched the chaos with confusion. "What are they doing? Are they retreating? Attacking? This makes no sense." His tactical officer was equally confused. "They appear to be panicking, Commander. Their formation has completely broken down." Kraxtal felt a moment of disappointment. Perhaps the humans would not provide even token resistance. Very well. All ships target the human vessels and fire at will. The Zintax fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles streaked toward their targets. It should have been a massacre. It was. Just not the massacre Kraxtal expected. The human ships that had seemed to be fleeing suddenly turned. Their weapons fired, but not at the Zintax ships. They fired at the space between the fleets. Hundreds of small objects scattered across the void, nuclear mines, each one moving at different velocities, each one broadcasting false sensor signatures, each one programmed to detonate if a Zintax ship came within a certain range. The Zintax formation, so perfect and organized, flew directly into the trap. Explosions rippled through their fleet. Shields flared and failed. Ships collided trying to avoid the mines. The perfect formation became a confused mass of vessels trying not to destroy each other, and then the human ships that had climbed above the orbital plane dove down. They had positioned themselves perfectly. The Zintax fleet was trapped between the mines below and the human attack from above. Admiral Chen watched 12 Zintax cruisers die in the first 30 seconds. Now, she said, the ships that had rushed directly at the Zintax fleet revealed their true purpose. They were not attacking ships. They were bombs, massive kinetic kill vehicles with human pilots who had volunteered for a one-way mission. They slammed into Zintax dreadnoughts at relativistic velocities. The explosions were visible from Earth. Kraxtal stared at the tactical display in shock. In 90 seconds, he had lost 47 ships. 47. More casualties than he had taken in his entire career. "Reform the fleet," he screamed. "Return fire. Destroy them all!" The Zintax fleet began to recover. They were disciplined, professional. They had trained for thousands of years. Slowly, they regained their formation and began to fight back, and humans began to die. The Zintax weapons were devastatingly effective. Human shields failed under the barrage. Ships broke apart. Escape pods launched into space, carrying crews that would probably die before rescue arrived. But humans did not stop fighting. Captain Rodriguez commanded the destroyer Phoenix. His ship had taken 3 direct hits. Life support was failing. Half his crew was dead, but his weapons still worked. He aimed his ship directly at a Zintax battleship and fired every weapon he had. Then he activated the self-destruct and abandoned ship. The Phoenix rammed the battleship 10 seconds later. Both ships died in fire and debris. Across the battlefield, other human commanders made the same choice. If they could not win, they would take as many Zintax with them as possible. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the human fleet was shattered. Only 43 ships remained operational. Most of those were damaged. Admiral Chen had lost 157 ships and over 30,000 people. But the Xinthax had lost 208 ships, nearly half their fleet, and they had not even reached Earth yet. Kraxtal sat in his command chamber staring at the casualty reports. 208 ships, over 70,000 of his soldiers dead, against an enemy that was supposed to be primitive, inferior. For the first time in his career, High Executor Kraxtal felt something close to fear. "We should request reinforcements," his second-in-command said quietly. Kraxtal struck the console with one of his arms. "No. The Council already questions my competence. If I request reinforcements against these primitives, I will be executed for cowardice. We have 292 ships remaining. More than enough to destroy their homeworld, but sir, they fight with such ferocity. They are willing to die to kill us. I have never seen such tactics." "Because you have never fought an enemy that refused to surrender," Kraxtal snapped. "But they will learn. When we reduce their planet to ash, they will learn that resistance is futile." He turned back to the tactical display. But even as he gave orders to continue toward Earth, doubt gnawed at him. The humans had known tactics he had never encountered, weapons he had not expected, a willingness to sacrifice themselves that bordered on insanity. What else did they have waiting? On Earth, the survivors of the Battle of Jupiter were hailed as heroes. Admiral Chen addressed the entire planet on every broadcast channel. "We lost today," she said. "We lost ships. We lost friends. We lost people we loved. But we proved something the Xinthax did not expect. We proved that humans do not surrender. We proved that humans fight back. And we proved that the Xinthax can be hurt." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "They still have 300 ships. They are still coming, and we cannot stop them with conventional warfare. So we are going to fight unconventionally. We are going to use every weapon we have, every tactic, every advantage, and we are going to make them regret the day they decided to provoke humanity." The broadcast ended. Around the planet, people went back to work. Factories that had made consumer goods retooled to make weapons. Scientists who had studied peaceful technology turned their minds to war. Artists and musicians created propaganda that steeled humanity's resolve. Dr. Webb worked in a secret laboratory, developing Project Pandora. The virus he had created was horrifying. It targeted Xinthax neurochemistry specifically. It would not kill them. It would do something worse. It would make them paranoid, make them doubt their own senses, make them fear their own comrades. He hated himself for creating it, but he hated the Xinthax more. Captain Rodriguez trained a new team for another boarding mission. The Xinthax fleet would pass through the asteroid belt again. This time humans would be ready. This time they would plant the virus directly in the Xinthax ventilation systems. All across the solar system, humanity prepared for the next battle. They built weapons. They planned ambushes. They prepared for the possibility that Earth itself might burn, but they did not prepare to surrender. The Xinthax fleet continued toward Earth, but now they moved more slowly, more carefully. They scanned every asteroid, checked every sensor reading, expected traps around every moon. High Executor Kraxtal realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. The humans were not fighting to win battles. They were fighting to survive. And a species fighting for survival would do anything, use any weapon, accept any cost. The Xinthax had forgotten that lesson over 3,000 years of easy victories. They were about to remember it the hard way. In the cold void between Jupiter and Mars, both sides prepared for a war unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. A war between an empire that had never lost and a species that refused to surrender. The moment aliens regretted provoking humanity was only beginning. The war had been raging for 18 months. 18 months of battles across the solar system. 18 months of death and destruction on a scale humanity had never experienced. The Xinthax fleet, once 500 strong, now numbered less than 200 ships, but they were still winning. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in what remained of Earth Defense Command. Half the building had been destroyed in a Xinthax orbital strike 2 weeks ago. They had rebuilt command operations in the underground bunkers, surrounded by rock and concrete and the constant fear that the next strike would be the one that broke them. The tactical display showed the grim reality. Mars was a graveyard. The moon bases were destroyed. The asteroid belt stations were gone, and the Xinthax fleet was now in orbit around Earth, methodically destroying every military target they could find. Earth had maybe 70 ships left. Most were damaged. Ammunition was running low. Fuel reserves were critical. And still, humanity fought. Captain Rodriguez had led 3 more boarding missions in the past year. Each time his team had captured intelligence. Each time they had planted Dr. Webb's virus. And each time fewer of his people came back. The virus was working. Reports from intercepted Xinthax communications showed paranoia spreading through their fleet. Soldiers questioning orders. Commanders doubting their crews. The perfect discipline of the Xinthax military was cracking, but it was not enough. Admiral Chen, we have a priority alert, her communications officer said. The Xinthax are moving a massive ship into position. Sensor readings suggest it's a planet killer. Chen felt her blood turn cold. Show me. The display changed. A ship unlike any they had seen before. 10 kilometers long, covered in weapons that seemed designed for only one purpose. Cracking planets time until it can fire. 96 hours, Admiral. They're charging the weapon now. Chen looked at the people around her. Exhausted, terrified, but still at their posts. Still fighting. For 18 months, humanity had held on through sheer willpower and stubbornness. But there was a limit to what even humans could endure. Get me President Martinez, she said quietly, and activate Project Exodus. Project Exodus was humanity's last resort. Colony ships, hidden in the outer solar system, ready to evacuate as many people as possible and run, to preserve the species even if Earth died. But Chen had no intention of running. High Executor Krax Tal watched the planet-killer weapon charge with grim satisfaction. 18 months. 18 months of fighting primitives who should have surrendered in days. He had lost over 300 ships. His reputation was destroyed. The Hegemony Council had already sent messages demanding his immediate return to face judgment. But first, he would finish this. He would reduce Earth to molten rock. He would prove that the Xinthax hegemony could not be defeated. And then he would face whatever punishment the Council decided. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet, his communications officer said. Krax Tal almost ignored it. What could the humans possibly say that mattered now? But curiosity made him accept. Show me. Admiral Chen appeared on the display. She looked tired, worn down by months of war, but her eyes were hard as steel. High Executor Krax Tal, she said. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Coalition. I have a proposal. Krax Tal clicked his mandibles in what passed for Xinthax laughter. A proposal? You are about to die. Your planet will be destroyed in 96 hours. What could you possibly propose? Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Mutual survival. You see, High Executor, we know where your homeworld is. We captured the location from one of your ships months ago, and we have weapons aimed at it right now. Krax Tal felt a chill run through his body. Impossible. You do not have faster-than-light capability. You cannot possibly have ships at Xinthax Prime. You are right, Chen agreed. We do not have ships there. But we do have weapons. Relativistic kinetic missiles. We launched them toward your homeworld 6 months ago. They are traveling at 90% light speed. Your people will never see them coming. And by the time you receive this message and send a warning home, it will be too late to stop them all. The command chamber fell silent. Krax Tal stared at the human admiral, trying to understand if she was bluffing. But the coldness in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. She was not bluffing. Humans had sent weapons to destroy his home world. Weapons that were probably unstoppable. You are insane, he whispered. No, Chen said. We are desperate, and desperate humans are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. You have 96 hours to make a choice, High Executor. Stand down your planet killer and begin peace negotiations, or we both die. Your fleet destroys Earth. Our missiles destroy Xinthax Prime. Both our species pay the price for this war. You would destroy your own world to kill ours? If you force our hand, yes, Chen said simply. We will not surrender. We will not submit. And if we must die, we will take you with us. That is the human way. We have been killing each other for thousands of years. We are very good at it. And now you have taught us to apply those skills on a galactic scale. The transmission ended. Krax Tal sat in silence, processing what he had just heard. Around him, his officers waited for orders. But for the first time in his long career, he had no idea what to do. Captain Rodriguez led his team on one final mission. They had captured a Xinthax officer during a raid. Under interrogation, The officer had revealed the location of High Executor Kraxtal's command ship. Now Rodriguez and his team floated in space near that ship, preparing to board. This was not a mission to gather intelligence. This was an assassination. If Kraxtal refused to stand down, Rodriguez would kill him, and maybe, just maybe, whoever took command next would be more reasonable. They breached the hull quietly. The Zinthak's security was good, but Rodriguez's team had been doing this for 18 months. They knew every weakness, every vulnerability. They moved through the ship like ghosts, leaving dead Zinthaks in their wake. The command chamber was heavily guarded. Rodriguez and his team killed 12 guards before they breached the door. Inside, High Executor Kraxtal stood alone, staring at a tactical display. He did not turn when Rodriguez entered. "So the humans have come to kill me in person. How appropriate." Rodriguez aimed his weapon at the alien commander's back. "You killed my family. You killed 340,000 people on Mars Colony 3. You started this war." Kraxtal finally turned. His alien features were impossible to read, but his voice carried something that might have been regret. "I did what I was ordered to do. What I have done for 3,000 years, conquer, subjugate, I never questioned it. Never wondered if it was right." He gestured at the display. "But you humans taught me something. You taught me that some species cannot be conquered. Some species would rather die than submit. And maybe, just maybe, the Zinthak's hegemony has been wrong for 3,000 years." Rodriguez kept his weapon steady. "So what happens now?" Kraxtal turned back to the display. "Now I make the hardest decision of my life. I stand down the planet killer. I begin peace negotiations, and I accept whatever punishment my people decide I deserve for being the first Zinthak's commander in history to surrender." "Why?" Rodriguez demanded. "Why surrender now?" "Because you proved your point," Kraxtal said quietly. "You proved that humanity would rather destroy both our species than live as slaves. And I finally understand that such determination cannot be defeated, only respected." He activated his communication system. "All Zinthak ships, this is High Executor Kraxtal. Stand down all weapons. Begin withdrawal from Earth orbit. We are entering peace negotiations with the humans." Rodriguez lowered his weapon. He wanted to kill this alien, wanted revenge for everything humanity had lost. But killing Kraxtal now would only restart the war, and humanity could not survive another battle. "You made the right choice," he said finally. Kraxtal looked at him with alien eyes that held something almost like sadness. "Did I? Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply the first of my kind to realize that conquest has a price. And sometimes that price is too high to pay." The war was over. After 18 months of fighting, after billions dead on both sides, after weapons that scarred planets and left debris fields that would orbit for centuries, the war was finally over. But the moment aliens regretted provoking humanity would be remembered forever. 5 years had passed since the war ended. 5 years since the Zinthak's fleet withdrew from Earth orbit. 5 years since humanity proved that some species could not be conquered. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the monument on Mars. They had rebuilt Colony 3. Not exactly as it was before, but something new. Something that honored the 340,000 people who died here. The monument was simple, a wall of black stone with every name carved into it, and at the top, words that every human now knew by heart. "Here lies 340,000 souls. They died because someone thought humanity would submit. We never will." Chen placed her hand on the cold stone. So many names. So many lives. The war had cost humanity dearly. 2.4 billion people dead. Entire cities destroyed. The solar system scarred with debris and radiation. Earth itself had taken orbital strikes that killed millions. But humanity survived. And more than that, humanity had changed the galaxy. The peace negotiations had taken 6 months. The Zinthak's Hegemony Council had initially refused to accept surrender. They demanded that Kraxtal continue the war. But Kraxtal had done something unprecedented. He had refused. He had shown the Council exactly what humans were capable of. He had explained that continuing the war would result in the destruction of both species. The Council had executed him for cowardice. But they had also agreed to peace. The peace treaty was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Humanity refused to become part of the Zinthak's hegemony, refused to pay tribute, refused to accept any form of subjugation. Instead, they demanded recognition as an independent power, equal status with the Zinthak's. And the Xinthax, for the first time in 3,000 years, agreed. Dr. Marcus Webb now served as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. The Council was a loose organization of species that had survived Xinthax conquest. Most were still technically part of the hegemony, but the war with humanity had weakened Xinthax control. Other species were watching, learning. If humans could resist the Xinthax, maybe they could too. Webb sat in his office on the council station reviewing reports from across the galaxy. 3 species had declared independence in the past year. 2 more were in active rebellion. The Xinthax hegemony, once the most powerful empire in the known galaxy, was fracturing, and humanity was at the center of it all. A message appeared on his display. It was from the Varex Consortium, the neutral traders who had secretly helped humanity during the war. They wanted to establish formal trade relations. They wanted access to human technology. They wanted to learn how humans had defeated the Xinthax. Webb smiled. Humanity had always been good at 2 things: fighting and trading. Now they would teach the galaxy both. Captain James Rodriguez ran the Human Military Academy now. It was not just for humans anymore. Species from across the galaxy sent their best soldiers to learn human tactics, to understand how a weaker force could defeat a stronger one through determination and creativity. Rodriguez stood before a class of mixed species. Humans, Varex, even a few former Xinthax soldiers who had deserted. He activated the holographic display and showed them the Battle of Jupiter. "This is what we call asymmetric warfare," he said. "The enemy is stronger, better equipped, more experienced, so you do not fight them on their terms. You change the rules. You use weapons they do not expect, tactics they have never seen, and you never ever surrender." One of the students, a young Xinthax, raised a claw. "But Captain Rodriguez, is such fighting not dishonorable?" Humans used nuclear mines, suicide attacks, biological weapons. These are not the tactics of civilized warfare. Rodriguez looked at the student for a long moment. "There is no such thing as civilized warfare. There is only survival. Your people learned that lesson when they tried to conquer us. We will do anything to survive. Use any weapon, accept any cost. That is what makes humans dangerous, and that is what I am teaching you." The class fell silent, but Rodriguez could see understanding in their eyes. They were learning, and when they returned to their home worlds, they would teach others. The galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Chen retired after 5 years. She had served humanity well, but the cost had been too high. She had ordered attacks that killed thousands. She had authorized weapons that violated every ethical principle she once believed in. She had become the monster that was necessary to defeat monsters. Now she lived quietly in a small house in what used to be called New York. The city had been rebuilt after the Xinthax bombardment. It was different now, harder, but still alive. She sat on her porch watching the sunset. In the sky above, she could see ships moving. Human ships, alien ships, trade vessels and military escorts. Earth was part of the galactic community now. Not as a conquered species, as an equal. As a power that others respected and feared. A shuttle landed nearby. Rodriguez stepped out and walked toward her house. He looked older too. The war had aged everyone who survived it. "Admiral," he said, sitting beside her. "I am not an admiral anymore, James, just Sarah." He smiled. "Old habits." "I came to tell you something. The Galactic Council just voted. They are establishing something called the Galactic Security Accords. Rules for warfare. Protections for civilian populations. Bans on planet-killing weapons." Chen raised an eyebrow. "And they asked humanity to help write these rules?" "More than that. They want us to enforce them. They want human ships patrolling known space, making sure no one else does what the Xinthax did to us." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "We went from fighting for survival to being galactic peacekeepers in 5 years. How did that happen?" Rodriguez shrugged. "We proved we could not be conquered, and in doing so, we showed every other species that conquest itself is wrong. The Xinthax ruled through fear. We taught the galaxy that fear has limits, that some species will fight back no matter the cost. Do you think it will last?" Chen asked. "The peace? I think it will last as long as everyone remembers what happened when someone provoked humanity. We lost billions, but we made sure the Xinthax lost more. We made sure the entire galaxy saw what happens when you back humans into a corner. That lesson will not be forgotten soon." Chen looked up at the ships moving across the sky. Somewhere out there on planets she would never visit, people were telling stories about the human Xinthax War. Stories about how a primitive species defeated a galactic empire. Stories about Admiral Sarah Chen and Captain James Rodriguez and Dr. Marcus Webb. Stories about 340,000 people who died on Mars and became the spark that ignited human resistance. The stories would be exaggerated. Humans would become legendary warriors. The Xinthax would become monsters. The truth would be lost in myth. But the core message would remain. Do not provoke humanity. Do not underestimate them. Do not assume they will surrender, because humans would rather die fighting than live as slaves. On the Xinthax homeworld, the new High Executor stood before the council. She was young for the position. Promoted after the old council was purged for their failure in the human war. She held a data tablet containing new military protocols. Honored council members, she began. I present the revised first contact procedures. When encountering a new species, we will no longer demand immediate subjugation. We will instead offer diplomatic relations, trade, cultural exchange, and only if they prove hostile will we consider military action. One of the council members clicked his mandibles skeptically. This is a significant change from 3,000 years of tradition. Yes, the High Executor agreed. But our tradition nearly destroyed us. The humans showed us that conquest has a price. They showed us that some species cannot be broken. And they showed us that pride and arrogance are weaknesses, not strengths. She looked at each council member in turn. We can continue as we have for 3,000 years and watch our empire crumble, as species after species rebels. Or we can adapt. We can learn from our defeat. We can become something better than conquerors. The council voted. It was not unanimous, but it passed. The Xinthax hegemony would change. Not quickly, not easily, but change would come, and it was all because of humanity. 10 years after the war, a new alien species discovered humanity. They were called the Cricks. They were aggressive, expansionist. Their scout ships entered human space without permission. The Cricks commander reviewed the intelligence on this new species, humans, bipedal, carbon-based, technologically advanced but not exceptionally so. They seemed like an easy target for conquest. The commander prepared to send the standard ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed, but his intelligence officer stopped him. Commander, you need to see this first. The intelligence officer displayed footage from the human Xinthax War. Battle after battle. Humans using tactics that seemed insane, sacrificing ships to destroy larger vessels, using weapons that damaged their own forces, fighting with a desperation and ferocity that was terrifying to watch. And at the end, the footage showed the Xinthax fleet withdrawing, defeated, by a species they had considered primitive. The Cricks commander watched in silence. Then he made a decision. Withdraw our scout ships, open diplomatic channels, and under no circumstances should we threaten these humans. The intelligence officer looked surprised. We are abandoning conquest? The commander clicked his claws. No, we are choosing not to provoke a species that destroyed the Xinthax hegemony. There is a difference between conquest and suicide.